Hi folks, welcome back to the channel. Thanks for clicking on the video. As you've probably guessed, today's video is Woodstove related. Long story short, I purchased a new wood stove recently for this winter, which I'm quite excited about, and I'm using it as an excuse to just come out for the day. I'm going to talk about my old stove. Maybe you could call it a bit of a review. Have a look at the new stove, burn in the new stove. I haven't done that yet. And just talk a little bit about my thinking and what I've chosen and why I wasn't happy with the old one. And it might help people a little bit. If you stick around for forest thoughts as well, I'm going to do a little bit on firewood selection, but maybe go into slightly different detail than I've seen anyone else do so far. So yeah, stick around, we'll have a look at these wood stoves and see what you think. Okay, a little bit of background first, and I'd just like to say this is not a comprehensive guide, or I'm not an expert. I don't own 20 different wood stoves. It's just some of my thoughts and a bit of explanation to maybe help someone who is looking at doing this type of thing. So both of these wood stoves are designed to have an enclosed fire within them, and they have a chimney. So ideally they're intended for hot tent camping. Now if you don't know what hot tent camping is, it's just as it sounds really. You have a tent that is sort of purpose built with a fireproof sort of hole in it, or a jack it's called, to have one of these in, so it's warm inside your tent, and that's pretty much it. You can get shelters in a variety of materials, from ultralight sort of sill nylon stuff through to really heavy canvas, strong material, and sort of everything in between. And I think for a lot of people in the UK, camping in the winter is not the most sort of common activity, especially in a forest environment. A lot of people just don't have access to forest. So, the idea of camping in winter in the forest with something like this in the UK, it's still quite a niche thing. And I mean, the reason I got interested in it is because you obviously see a lot of people in Scandinavia and Canada using these things. And I think the driver for that obviously is climate. They get a lot sort of harsher winter, colder winter, and the idea of going out for a few days and having something like this to keep you warm, it's fantastic. And I suppose for me personally, that's why I sort of put off getting one for a long time, because I always thought it was a bit overkill for the UK or Scotland, because as much as people say Scotland is cold, it doesn't really get that cold. It gets wet and cool, but the amount of days we actually have below zero are not that many, and to be honest, it's getting less and less each year. So one good thing about it in this country is, though, that, like I say, it is very wet, and it's really nice to come back to your tent and have something warm to sit beside like this, and even just being able to sit out and enjoy a fire in a shelter space as well. Just watch the fire through the evening. So yeah, eventually I bought one last year, and some of these can be very expensive, and I stupidly went the cheaper route because I wasn't sure if it was really going to be something that I enjoyed or would get on with, and I bought a sort of cheaper steel wood stove from a Chinese company. It was still, I think it was about £190, and it's lasted okay. I had it out quite a bit last year, but there's some things now that are starting to fail, and a couple of them are actually a little bit dangerous, and I'll talk about that in a minute. But yeah, one thing it taught me using it is that I really enjoy this kind of setup. So this is the one I originally wanted, or something like it. It's a lightweight titanium stove. Not cheap by any means. I've basically been saving up for this since last winter, and I finally got it. So yeah, I'm excited to get out and use it. Like I say, I'll talk about this a little bit more in a minute, but you know, there's different types of wood stoves. So this one's sort of a flat pack folding stove. This one it is in bits, obviously, but it's the stove body itself is fixed. You can't fold it down, and I'll talk a little bit about the pluses and negatives of that. But you know, these things, the beauty of these things is, you know, they're not limited to hot tents either. You can use it with a tarp, having an enclosed fire outside your camper van. You know, the options are endless. You know, you can have it in your workshop if you want. But when it comes to this kind of thing, obviously it's the same as any other bit of gear. You need to think, you know, how far are you walking, what the weather's going to be, you know, the weight of these things, you know, the size of them. You can get anything from a small, almost like lightweight travelling folding wood stove, you know, up to these big, you know, almost like, I don't know, Canadian hunting camp, you know, where you're trying to keep a dozen people warm in a big massive teepee tent, and like I say, everything in between. So I tend to not travel too far with this kind of setup in the winter. I'm maybe walking a few kilometres into the forest, that's it. You know, I'm not going to be backpacking huge distances with this. I'm not going to be pulling it for miles and miles on a sled, because we just don't have the weather for that here. So I've got something reasonably light, not too bulky, that's easily carried for, you know, say 5 kilometres, or a little bit more, a little bit less, that kind of idea. So yeah, the fact that it may look bulky on the camera, but weight wise it's almost nothing. Very comfortable to carry, you know, in your hand. You could strap it onto the bag, there is loops for it. So yeah, very easily carried, but for the benefit and the joy you get from these things, it's absolutely worth it. So yeah, I'll start with this first stove. It's from a company called 3F UL Gear, and the UL stands for ultralight. Like I say, it's a Chinese company. I'll put links in the description to these things if you want to check them out anyway. And yeah, this is a sort of collapsible stove, but I'll open it now, talk about it, and show you how it's sort of set up, and you know, talk about my issues with it. Just before I get into it, I just wanted to say as well that this is a little bit of an unfair comparison. You know, this isn't a very good folding stove versus a very good sort of fixed stove. You know, this is probably a poor quality folding stove amongst versus probably one of the best fixed lightweight stoves you're going to get. So yeah, just keep that in mind. I'm not really comparing the styles, although I will talk about that. I'm just talking about wood stoves in general. Okay, so this is the Folding Tribe Wood Stove 2.0 from 3F Ultralight Gear. As you can see, it's a collapsible stove. It's probably, the whole thing's probably about the size of a mid-range laptop, in a bag, that kind of idea. And first of all, one thing that really annoyed me was they put the handle on the top here. So when you're carrying it, especially if there's quite a bit of vegetation on the ground, it's constantly hitting it. I don't know why you would put it on the long side, so there's less of the stove hanging down, but anyway, probably a minor thing, but just little touches like that can make the difference. So anyway, we'll get into the stove. So yeah, it comes in this bag, and obviously this has been well used, but this is basically it. That's just a pair of cheap gloves that come with it for rolling up the chimney, which I'll show you in a minute. But this is the main stove body. It's 3 kilos in total, which for me that was quite a good weight, I thought, when I was looking at it, for what you're getting. And yeah, this is a steel wood stove. So anyway, I'll get it out. It comes in different parts. You've got the top there, and you can see already some of the issues here is that I've used it probably 8 or 9 times, you know, properly camping overnight or for maybe more than one night, and the warping on this is quite severe, and I'll show you why that matters in a minute. So yeah, you've got the lid, the main stove body itself, and then I'll show these other bits and pieces in a minute. But yeah, you can see, you know, these things do warp to a certain extent, but if you've got good quality materials, it shouldn't warp enough that it's difficult to put together, and this is what's happened with this one. So yeah, basically it folds out. Again, it's quite stiff because it's all, but you can see there it's just it's a little bit all over the place. These are the sides for it. Again, you know, you can, I don't know if you can make that out, but you know, it's all over the place really. But like I say, if you get one of these with good materials, especially if it's the same company of the second one I'm going to show you, then this wouldn't be an issue. So yeah, don't let this put you off folding wood stoves. I think they're absolutely brilliant for the packability and lightweight. You know, this is just a bad example of one. Like, I don't even know if I'm going to be able to put this together, to be honest, but there's little notches here, and this basically slides in like that. The first bit's fine because the warping doesn't really matter, but if you see there that, again, you know, this is the ridge that the side fits into, and the weld has actually come away here. So when you've got a fire going, and especially if it's a bit of a smoky one, or it's not drawing very well, there's a bit of a gap here now because this isn't keeping it tight. So again, you know, that could be quite dangerous if you're not paying attention. Yeah, this one goes in as well. And to be honest, I might put these gloves on because there's a few sharp edges, and if you're not paying attention, you can cut yourself. So yeah, I mean, it's almost impossible to get it to sit nicely. That's not too bad actually, but yeah, I'll show you that. You can see that there. You know, there's quite a big gap there now. So yeah, and basically this fits on the top. This is the hard bit because it's all bent out of shape. It's quite hard to get it to fit in these grooves. Now that looks like it's on, but it's actually not. It's not quite in the groove there. So anyway, you can see why you can see why I have issues with this thing. Yeah, I don't really trust it now, to be honest. And that sort of leads me on to the next issue, that you've got the damper here, which fits in like that. You can open and close, but there's supposed to be a spark arrestor bit on top of this, and this should be welded to it, but that, we'll drop that now, but that's actually, the weld has failed on that too. So yeah, you've lost the spark arrestor, because that just, yeah, like you see it falls in, and it, yeah. So yeah, that was very, very disappointing. And I had a couple of times where firewood is maybe a touch damp, but not to the point it should have been an issue. But because of a couple of the holes in here, it wasn't drawing at all, and because it was pine, this actually built up with quite a lot of material where it almost blocked this. And one night I was sitting in the hot tent, and all this like black smoke just started billowing like out here into the tent, which again, incredibly dangerous. But yeah, I'll show you it's got the simple folding legs, they're fine, very basic. And because it's quite tall, it's quite windy in this country, I've got a couple of pegs here, and I would actually, standing up, I would sort of hook these in, that's into the ground, just to keep it steady, one on either side, and that worked quite well. But yeah, I'll show you other little touches on the other one that just make the difference. So yeah, you've got the door, it's all fine, it just kind of locks in place. You've got a tiny little viewing window, and you've got your vent control as well. So that's pretty much it. And it's a good size, it's a good size. You can get a small kettle and a pot on at the same time, which is quite good for cooking in the tent. Some of them are, you get them quite small, you maybe get a small pot. Some of them are huge and you can cook a whole load of stuff on it, but yeah, this is a good size for me. So that's something to think about as well, what you're planning to, not just as a heat source, but as something to cook on, what size of things and what types of meals you want to make. The chimney is one of these, it's a very thin steel material, and again, brilliant for sort of packability and the size of it, and if you have good material, it shouldn't be an issue. But with this one, the steel isn't the best. It's very easy to sort of get a little bit of a kink in these things, and I'll unroll this and put it together just now, and I'll show you what's happened with this one. But like I say, in a good quality folding stove, it shouldn't be an issue. And one thing to remember with this is that when you do it for the first time, it's quite hard to get the shape of it. So if you can wrap it around something, that helps. But also it's important to, once you burn it in, it kind of holds the shape. So as much as this is rolled up this way, when I roll this out, it actually wants to roll the other way to make the chimney, and that's because it's had that sort of heat, or gone through that heating and cooling process. So I'll roll this out and show you just now. So you can see there, it wants to make that chimney shape. And it is a case of just rolling it up. And these things usually come with, a set of rings. And it's just a case of sliding them on. Just space them out evenly. And that's it. And I actually cut this one down because it was way too high for what I needed, and it was actually becoming a bit unstable. So you can do that as well, and that's basically your chimney. The problem is, you can see, I'll bring it a bit closer. It's very easy to get a kink in these things, which I have here, and it's actually a little hole. And again, I've had where you know, soot and things have built up, and it's been sort of heating and melting, and it's been dripping on the outside and down onto the tent, which is, yeah, not good. So as much as there is advantage to these things, they are quite fragile, and you have to be a little bit careful. So that's something to think of. Yeah, so for this one, that should be on there already. You know, that should be fixed in place, but it's obviously not. And then you get this larger ring. Yeah, so that just fits on the outside of that piece, and then you slide that ring down, and that sort of keeps it relatively secure. Although I'm not a fan of that design, because it's actually not that secure, but that's basically how it works, and a lot of these similar stoves work to a point. Like I say, the sparker is already inside, so there's nothing to put on top of the chimney. I modified this ring to go on it, just so I can sort of guy it down, keep it steady in the wind, which worked okay. But again, this doesn't come with the stove, and I've got guy lines as well, which don't come with the stove. I forgot to say as well, there's two wing nuts as well that go on either end, just to secure the lid to the main stove. And that's pretty much it. They work very well. Like I say, it's just a couple of issues with this particular model that yeah, I don't really feel safe or confident using it now, and it's just going to get more and more warped as well and harder to put together. And yeah, I just decided I wanted to use something else long term. So yeah, that's the 3F UL Woodstove 2.0. So anyway, on to this one, and this is a thing of beauty. It really is. I don't often get excited about gear to this extent, but this is, yeah, I'm really excited about this one. So this is a wood stove from, I'm not sure how you say it. I don't know if it's Pomoly, American company, and I've seen their wood stoves used all over the place. There's loads of YouTube videos if you want to check them out. They're not cheap, but they're very high quality, and I just decided I wanted to buy one of the best. So like I say, I saved up and I got this one. It wasn't cheap by any means. I think it was about £430 all in, and a few of you probably gasped at that, but like I say, this can be used for so many different things as well. It's not just for hot tent camping, and it's built to last. So anyway, this is the Traveller 3 wood stove. Again, I'll put a link in the description. It's lightweight titanium as opposed to steel, and it's a fixed chimney as opposed to a rolled chimney. But I'll open it and just let you see. Again, we've got this bag. Just the bag is better quality than the other one. You've got these two loops either side, so it's great for, you can sling it, you know, under a bag or even on top of your rucksack if that works. So like I say, it's a fixed body stove, so you don't have to fold it up. So already you're way ahead of the other stove. The bag's a little bit tight. And there you go. That's it. And when I opened the box for this, you know when you buy something really good quality and you can just tell straight away how much better it is. But yeah, we've got this small viewing window in the front, and again, similar setup to the other one. And the beauty of this one is it's got two side viewing windows, which is going to be great to watch the fire in the evenings. Folding legs again, but these are actually independent rather than, you know, two just kickstands almost. And the beauty of this, when I was talking about little touches with the other one, is they've got holes in the feet here designed to peg it down. So, you know, someone's thinking about this. Like I say, it's solid shape, it's kind of a hexagonal shape, and you've got loads of rivets here, so it's very unlikely to warp. You know, it's a very strong, stable structure. And the nice bit is that all the chimney pieces are able to fit inside. We've got 1, 2, and that one's actually got a spark arrestor on the top, so you don't have to worry about that. 4, 5, 6, and this stove also has, it's got a false bottom, so that should help with air circulation, and it should burn better rather than the fire just sitting right on the bottom. And again, a little bit easier to empty out because all the ash will be under there. Just, you know, yep, shut that there. What else? Yeah, I mean the stove, again, it's fixed and it's more space, but because it fits inside here, it's not an issue. Like I say, these are titanium, they weigh nothing. It takes seconds to put these things together. You know, that's it. You've got there's no messing about rolling up or, you know, worrying about breaking the stove. It's all here. And the nice bit about this is, depending on what tent you've got and what setup, you can take a section out if you want it shorter or taller. If you really want to, you know, these would be quite easy to clean them out as well, as opposed to, you know, you can't really clean the folding one because of the material. You know, if you sort of lean on it, you're gonna sort of crumple it all up and, yeah, have holes, and yeah, it's just not ideal. But for this, you know, you could get some kind of brush and just clean it all out. Yeah, like I say, it takes seconds to put together. And then on the top here, this is where the damper goes, and you basically got three screws. Undo them. Place the damper on. You've got a lip that sits inside as well, which helps to keep it secure. Screw these in. I think if I was to set up this fully without talking and compare it to the two, I think I would have this set up in half the time. Honestly, it takes a couple of minutes, if that. And that's it. And these, you know, that just sits on top of there, and that's more secure than the other one that had the extra steel ring and stuff to hold it on. You know, that's not going anywhere. And then the only last thing is you've got these little clips. And they've got a bit of spring in them, and they're basically designed to So they'll go into the hole there like that, and that's what you can guy it off to if you want to stabilise it. Such a simple little thing, but makes all the difference. And these, you know, they weigh nothing. I think your biggest issue is not losing them. And that's it, guys. And again, the reason I went for the fixed body is just less hassle. Yeah, this stove, I can't quite remember. I think it's maybe 2.9 or 3.1 kilos. So as a whole package, pretty much the same as the other stove, but all the features you get, the ease of putting it together, you know, the build quality, it's just more than worth it. I mean, just, it's not going to be hard to carry at all. Like I said, the shape of it and the bag, you should be able to, you know, sling it under your bag quite easily. So yeah, I'll put the rest of these pieces on. And yeah, one important thing to remember is, you know, these things come with all sorts of chemicals on the metal, so it's good practice to burn it in a well ventilated area, just to burn those chemicals off before you start using it in a, you know, an enclosed environment. And one other thing I suppose I should mention is that if you are hot tenting, that kind of thing, you know, you need to be aware of carbon monoxide, and I would take a small carbon monoxide detector with you just in case. The setup I've got, it's not like an airtight setup anyway, so I'm not too bad, but I know some of the sort of big canvas tents, you know, there's not really much airflow at all, and it could be quite dangerous. So yeah, something to think about. And you know, a small carbon monoxide detector doesn't weigh that much when it's a difference between, you know, saving your life. So anyway, like I say, I'm going to set this up. I'm going to get a fire going in it. I've got coffee and a bit of lunch, and yeah, we'll burn it in for the first time and have a look at it. Right, that's burning reasonably well. I'm going a little bit fancy with the coffee today because, well, why not? Right guys, thanks for sticking around. I'm going to try and make this as least rambly as possible. So I wanted to talk about the properties of firewood. There's lots of videos out there on YouTube about selecting the right firewood, what species, dead standing, all these terms. But I just wanted to talk a little bit more about the science behind that, and maybe that would help people understand a lot of the terms that get thrown about. Some of us take it for granted. We just understand, but some people are coming into this new. There's a lot of technical terms that are thrown around, and someone might think, what the hell are you talking about? So I'm going to start off. I'm going to put some terms and species names on the screen whilst I'm talking to hopefully help as well. I suppose the first two terms are conifer and broadleaf. So for conifer, it's very simple. It's a cone-bearing tree, a conifer tree. So you're talking pine, spruce, these kind of species. For broadleaf, again, it's instead of a needle, it's got a broad leaf. So you're talking oak, birch, ash, this kind of thing. Now the second two terms are, you have evergreen and deciduous. Now evergreen is the easier one. It's trees that retain their leaves all year round, and that tends to be conifer species. Although there is crossover in a lot of these terms. So something like a holly, that would keep its leaves all year round, but it's not a conifer. But most evergreens tend to be conifers. And then for deciduous, that's all the species that drop their leaves when it comes to autumn and winter. And that's a survival strategy for them. It's a risk to have these kind of soft, vulnerable leaves out through the winter. Conifer needles have quite a thick waxy coating which protects them, and they can carry on at a very slow pace, whereas the broadleaves, the frost and things would just destroy these leaves. It would have nothing to sort of keep it surviving through the winter, that kind of thing. So it drops its leaves, draws everything in, and basically shuts down. So that's evergreen and deciduous. Now there are some species that sort of go against the general assumption, and larch is a good one. So larch is a conifer, but it's deciduous, so it drops its needles in the winter. So most conifers tend to be evergreen. Most broadleaves tend to be deciduous, but there's a little bit of crossover. Now the next two terms are probably the most important when it comes to selecting firewood. So you have softwoods and hardwoods. And again, most softwoods are conifer and most hardwoods are broadleaves. So examples of softwoods again would be pine, fir, spruce, and examples of hardwoods would be oak, ash, birch. But what I really wanted to zero in on was what the hardwood and softwood actually means. And it sounds obvious. Go on. Good boy. But it's to do with the cell structure. So a lot of softwood species are very fast growing. They take on a lot of water, put on a lot of growth. So the cells are quite large, and those cells are full of water and all nutrients and all sorts of bits and pieces. But the space inside them is quite large because they grow quickly. Now, with the hardwoods, they tend to grow slower, but they grow more densely. So that cell structure, it's more lignin, the actual wood material, than cell. So you get smaller spaces, more cells, it's more dense, it's harder. So you've got a softer wood and a harder wood. Now, when you come to selecting firewood, you want dry firewood. You want it seasoned and dry. And seasoned just means it's been left out long enough that the moisture content has reduced to a point where it's worth burning. And that process, a lot of the time, it's splitting the logs up, creating as much surface area for that moisture to evaporate. Or if you're heading out into a camping situation where you don't have a store of firewood to leave a long time, you're looking for standing dead wood, because that's about as good as you're going to get. It's dead, it's not lying on the wet ground, chances are it's going to be the driest. But if you imagine a softwood completely dried out and seasoned, and a hardwood completely dried out and seasoned, that cell structure, there's a lot more air pockets in the softwood than the hardwood. Now this all might seem obvious, but I think some people don't really think about it in these terms. So the general rule of thumb is, for a softwood, it burns very hot and very quickly. So it's good for, say, boiling water. With a hardwood, it burns slower, and you tend to get more coals, and it just, it's a nice even heat for a longer period of time. And it's good for cooking, cooking a steak on, or just, cooking in general. And the reason for that is simply that once the softwood takes hold, there's so much more air in that softwood that the fire just rips through it, very quickly and very hot. And for the hardwood, the fire is, it's almost working harder to actually burn through more lignin. So it's slower and more even and steady. And I think if people understand that concept, it might help them to understand how firewood works and burns, and it might help them to understand things in general. Because when it comes to firewood, you obviously want to choose things that have the highest calorific value, and that basically just means the highest or the most heat you can get out of a volume of wood. So things that are very calorific are obviously oak and ash. They're very dense hardwoods. You've got birch. Birch is kind of in between the two. It's really good for cooking and burning in general. It's not quite as dense as oak and ash, but it's also a lot better than, say, pine and spruce. Pine and spruce are your classic quick boil firewoods. And that's really it. That's all I wanted to say. Just clarifying some terms and a bit of an explanation behind it, just to help people understand firewood. Because I feel like we live in a time now where someone comes into camping, they Google what's the best firewood, they go to YouTube, some outdoor YouTuber says birch, and that's it. They look for birch, and they don't really understand the reasons behind why birch works well. But that's it. So yeah, if you think of your log as like a tube full of air pockets, fire is going to sort of rip through the softwood quicker because there's more air in it, and more slowly for the hardwood because there's less air in it. That's it. It's quite simple, really. Again, I know I'm probably preaching to the choir to some of you, but I just thought this might help some people. So anyway, thanks again for watching. I'm going to just pack up the stove. The fire's burnt down. I'm really pleased with it, and I will hopefully see you on the next one.